Alrighty, so this is the third video under behaviorals for the Definitely series, and for this one, we're going to be answering why this specific bank, right? So ABC Bank might ask you, well, why do you want to work at ABC Bank, right? Or what stands out to you about ABC Bank? And there are two different answers to this depending where in the timeline you are, right? So if you're at like the very start, right? And this is not great. Like this is not great, right? So if you're at the very, very start of the recruiting timeline and they ask you this, first off, I have no idea why they would ask you this early on, but like a lot of banks do, right? So with that in mind, you need to have done a little bit of research on the bank beforehand, and then say that, oh, I really found this specific thing that the bank did really interesting, right? Or, oh, I personally am interested in oil and gas, and I think that this bank is like really exceptional in that space. Right? Or I heard this anecdote from this person and I think that it's really great, right? So this is if you really don't have anything, right? So you don't have like there isn't a company briefing, right, that you guys have attended. There isn't a person that you have talked to from this bank, right? And there isn't like a second year student that you talk to at this particular bank, or like any student that you've been able to find, right? Like this is truly the first conversation that you're having and you couldn't find any way to do this, right? In that scenario, research something about the bank and give it to them, and hopefully they're like okay with it and they just like write it down and call it a day, right? The normal answer, right, like this is what it like should be is based on the company briefing, right? You get the vibe of what like the bank wants, right? So if it's like a small, like middle market bank, right? Well, talk about like how you're really excited about like the space and you want to like um be like kind of in like that startup type environment, not like maybe like a startup type environment, but like a higher growth type environment with like smaller teams and like more ownership, right? Or if it's like a larger bank, then maybe talk about like how you they talked about like their platform or whatever, like you can kind of say something about that, right? But like the whole point of the company briefing is that you get the vibe of the bank overall, and then when they ask you why do you want to work in this bank, you're going to kind of like regurgitate that to them, right? Like based on what they personally think that they are the best at, they're going to tell you that in the company briefings. Well, then just regurgitate that to them, right? So whether that's the relationship that they have with your school, whether they're good at a specific type of thing, whatever the case is, maybe they have a really, really strong group, right? And that's the group that you're recruiting for, right? Well, then tell them that, right? Be like, oh, I'm like, they did this in this space, right? And I heard about it and this, right? The best thing that you can do is mention a person, right? So even if you're doing this based off what you heard in the company briefing, you're going to say, well, something that John mentioned that really stuck out to me was this, right? And that really makes me excited about this bank because this, right? So you're always tying it back to something that someone said from their bank. Because at the end of the day, like that's something that the banker cannot deny, right? If a managing director said that one of the biggest differentiating qualities about our bank is the strength of its balance sheet, right? Well, if even though that's a really, really generic thing that that managing director said, right? If you go up to the banker and say, "Oh, what really stands out to me is the strength of this bank's balance sheet," they're going to be like, "Well, that's kind of like a really generic answer. You could have told that to every single bank." Right? But if you say, "Oh, John, the managing director in this mentioned that one of the strengths was this, and that's something that I find to be really important to me," well, now that banker can't say, "Oh, that's a dumb reason," right? Because the MD himself said it, right? So That's something I would always kind of tie a person into it, right? And if there isn't a banker and there isn't someone that you're able to talk to, or there isn't like a vibe that you could get from a company briefing, or they didn't have a company briefing for whatever reason, right? Then I would talk to maybe like a second year that you were able to find on campus, or like a friend of a friend or something like that, and get a little bit more like color around like why this bank, right? If you can't do any of that, then sure, like research something generic and like try to spin a story out of it. But honestly, the best thing is tie in a person and talk about like the vibe that they're trying to sell you guys, right? Because only a couple banks can really say that they're the best, right? The other banks have to say that they're the best at some other thing, right? So based on that, that's how I'd answer kind of why this bank in particular, right? So I hope, yeah, I hope that's been helpful.